Oh boy, boom, swooping at you. You're already annoyed with me, I can tell, so I'll move right along. I'm Michael Swaim. This is a Friday edition of IGN News Live where we talk about news in gaming, movies, pop culture, and much, much more. I'm joined by various other people. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a loose cavalcade now.
Hi, it's me, your pal Jeremy.
There you go. This didn't work out at all. Matt, say hey. We got Matt Kim representing editorial and news.
Hello. Hi. Yes, I'm Matt Kim. I'm a reporter at IGN.
We have Jeremy Azevedo drinking
That's
a Bloody
right.
Mary. And we've got Destin Legary,
Hey.
our head of gaming, gameplay. What's your official?
Director of Content Strategy. And by content strategy, it means TD, I guess, for the next 2 months.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what I am really excited about, though?
Do tell.
Reading text, like this text. This week's episode is presented by PUBG Mobile. Last week, PUBG Mobile just dropped a ton of updates, and with Season 13 premiering this week, you'll want to get trained up and ready to brawl with these brand new additions. And earlier this week, we partnered with Powerbang in a PUBG Mobile live stream showcasing some of the incredibly new additions brought to the game, including the updated Miramar map, the Cheer Park, new achievements, and new weapons like the P90, baby.
Oh,
PUBG
man.
Mobile. Get it today if you want.
Hey, that's
You
great.
just
Powerbang.
crushed that, Destin. Yeah. That was a great episode.
I actually
thought
have it
right
installed
before
on
we
my
started
phone.
streaming, we decided I would have the honor of reading the PUBG Mobile statement, but now it's out there. Check
fun
it
having
out.
fun.
Gift you, dude.
Yeah. Speaking of having fun, people want to know what we're actually talking about. And at the top of the docket, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 being fully remastered. And specifically today, we finally got the full track listing because, of course, the original soundtrack is a big part of our nostalgia for those games and what made them so great. And music licensing can be tricky. So we didn't know exactly what tracks we were getting and which we weren't. The good news is most of them. And we have a complete list. And what else do we know, Matt? What do we know about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remaster?
That they did their best to get all the big songs from the original into the remaster. And you're right, licenses change, which is why they couldn't get every song, but they got Superman, and that was all people really cared about.
I
don't know if that's true. People say
go
that,
ahead.
but I've had friends that have tweeted out recently a reply with the first Tony Hawk song that comes into your head, and every single person had a different answer.
Yeah, I mean, it could be different for everyone, I guess. I'm a Superman guy, I guess, but I'm also very bad at Tony Hawk, so I'm not really a Tony Hawk guy either. So, I'm gonna stop this. But I do know some songs that weren't included in the remaster. They didn't get Anthrax, they didn't get Chuck D, they didn't get Speed Dealer.
How did they not get Anthrax?
Anthrax and Chuck D are technically in the same song, but you're right.
Well,
I don't know. It's probably because they're doing Bring the Noise, and Public Enemy owns the rights to that, and they have all kinds of weirdness. This is probably boring, but the reason why is because music rights are there's two always. There's masters and publishing, and masters and publishing are split up between different people, and in some cases multiple owners. And right now, Chuck D and Flavor Flav are in a fight because Chuck D wanted to do performances at Bernie Sanders rallies, and Flavor Flav did not. So that's probably why, believe it or not.
Oh, there you go.
All right, chat completely screaming at us that they only care about Cyberpunk, which we should have known we were walking into by putting it in the headline. But the numbers from our end show that a lot of people care about Tony Hawk Pro Skater, so we wanted to let you know that the
We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
We'll get to it.
We gotta build up that hype.
It's the very next story, but you gotta get your skate on.
I'm not moving on until chat tells us
Concurrence
what songs
just
they think
fell
of
off.
when they think of Tony Hawk.
I thought we'd have a fun time, share Tony Hawk memories. No, they do not want that.
I have really bad Tony Hawk memories because I'm bad at the game, and all the kids at my school want to play it when we.
Bad at the game. How
It's
can
a
you be
hard
bad at
game.
Tony
I was
Hawk?
like 12, and it's a hard game.
Adding the
for a
manual
12-year-old.
changed it and turned it into a pretty tricky, infinite combo simulator. Yeah.
Your motor development skills doesn't improve until you're into your teens or something. I don't know. My thumbs.
Tell that to the teen boys winning Fortnite tournaments.
True.
Although for the people who are fans of Tony Hawk and looking forward to the remasters, I wanted to mention that aside, of course, from graphics update and presumably some more levels and as much of the original soundtrack as we can get, it's also going to include Create a Park and Create a Skater modes that are broadly expanded. Do we know for sure whether the manual functionality is going to be retconned into one? That's my lingering question about these.
I don't
They
know.
did talk about a few returning things from, games because they were able to iterate on the formula with Underground and the subsequent games after that. I don't remember what specific modes and moves that they said would be making it into Tony Hawk. Now, when they re-released the game on, I believe it was 360, it was basically like Tony Hawk 1 HD, right? I think that might be what it was called. And I mean, it showed its age, right? I definitely am excited that they are going to be including newer move sets, like things that just feel more natural within Tony Hawk that you won't even really recognize.
Diesel Boy and Chaos. I don't even remember that one. For me, it was Bad Religion. But yeah, I will say from like the Twitter sphere and everything I can tell, although we don't have a social rep on today, Superman
if
by
you were to hear them,
Goldfinger.
you would know. Like
Yeah.
one of the songs they cut, B-Boy Document 99, it has such like an iconic beat to it that if you heard it, you would know within 1 second, like, yes, I remember that entire song. But just hearing the name of it, you're like, oh.
Yeah, Lagwagon, I vaguely recall. All right. So, hey, let's talk about the headline story of the day, Cyberpunk 2077, for as long as we can to forestall the inevitable part of the show where we get past the lead story and talk about other things. And the chat just becomes questions like, are they going to talk about Cyberpunk? When did they talk about Cyberpunk?
It's almost
So
like
let's
you've
talk
done this
about
before.
Cyberpunk. Yeah.
Hey, Swaim, you know what else has four wheels? A
What's that?
car. A car.
It's true. Well segued, my friend. Cyberpunk 2077 developer CD Projekt Red continue to drop little information tidbits, keeping us as hyped as possible for the upcoming game. And the latest is a car, an in-game car that seems to do honor to Mad Max, along with a tweet that congratulated Mad Max Fury Road on its 5-year anniversary. Although the car looks more like it's an OG Mad Max car. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's really, really, really sweet looking. I really like the one that sort of looked like a DeLorean that they showed in the CG trailer and everything. But it's nice to know that there are other cars that do feel like they come from the Cyberpunk world. What were you going to say, Matt?
It's just weird because like Mad Max isn't really Cyberpunk, but I like it. I like that they're just like, here's a cool car from a genre thing, so we're just gonna put it into our sci-fi game. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Revert, custom-built Wraith Gang vehicle based on the Quadra Type 66 car. With its near 1,000 horsepower, you will ride eternal, shiny and chrome. Happy 5th anniversary, Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah,
that's the tweet.
That was the tweet. Yeah.
what?
It doesn't strike me as like super, super Mad Maxy. I don't know. I'm like looking at it over and over here. And the body work and the paint detail and everything. I don't know. It looks cyberpunky to me.
Be honest.
It's in a dusty location. It looks like it's in a desert. I think if you put this in a city, like your brain would never associate it with Mad Max. I think it's more like the language they're using and the background that they're using. But removed from that scenario, it's just the bitch and cyberpunk part.
They cyberpunkified it, but they cyberpunkified it, but like the Mad Max is always like more heavy metal, which is not like a genre that's on the same verve as sci-fi. But
yeah, although seeing how NetherRealm has started to really broaden what licenses they allow into their, into Mortal Kombat with RoboCop and so on, Terminator. Are there other movie cars? If this is okay, do we want Knight Rider in there? Do we want a Batmobile? I don't want a Batmobile. I'll say that as I said that, I hate it.
Having a jet from Knight Rider would be cool. Or, like the car from Vanishing Point. Ooh, or any of the cars from Death Race 2000. Have you guys seen this? The Roger Corman movie?
Yes.
Those cars are great. You just pick those up and plop them right in. They'd fit right in there.
The Mach 5.
I'm willing to bet I'd like a speed racer car if they're just gonna,
I'd like them to release that later when I'm less immersed in the world, and it's okay to start like breaking my immersion. You know what I mean? Or have it as an optional like silly pack. I want it to stay. I want to be very serious about my Cyberpunk 2077 for a while.
Yeah, because
Justin, I just dropped a trailer for Death Race 2000 into the messages in case you want to go ahead and run that so we can see it.
Far superior to the Statham remake, I gotta say.
I was just thinking, you brought up the desert setting of the car, and I hopped on the Cyberpunk wiki, and I'm wondering if this is the Santa Diego Tijuana integrate. The way it's described in the Wikipedia is this region sprawls from the Mexican border town that was once Tijuana over the desert to San Diego, then north up the coast to Long Beach. Now, largely in the trailers and assets that we've seen, it's all in Night City.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Matt? Yeah. So it's all been in Night City and like in like major sprawling cities of whatever what do they call it? Sorry, the Free State of Northern California. And this is the first time we saw something that wasn't in a densely populated area, which has me a little bit more excited to know that there are going to be these spaces where they have the opportunity
That's a really
to
good point.
tell.
We haven't seen that before, have we?
No, we've mostly seen the city, right?
I've seen a lot of speculation around that, and I wonder, do you think that is a safe bet to make, that it's a confirmation? Like, what are the odds they just whipped up a desert background?
They wouldn't do that.
for
It's
this
like too
shot,
detailed.
no?
No way.
Well,
there's all
too much
kinds of
going on graphically.
Yeah.
Great. I'm
Yeah,
hoping
see-
that it's legit. Then that, if that's an area we can go to, that definitely, as I saw in comments on that article, that like makes us think, oh, there's outskirts too. That's really
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
I mean, CD Projekt did say that the primary of the game will take place. I messed that up. The game will take place primarily in Night City. There it is. And that Night City would be smaller in scale, but like denser in scope, or vice versa, than the world in Witcher 3. Is something that they confirmed on record.
You know what it's probably like? Is have you guys seen Dread 3D?
Oh yeah.
Judge Dredd, like they have this thing where they have like these like mega cities that are just huge and massive, and then like outside of it is just a wasteland.
Yeah, that's Night City, and like Los Angeles in the lore of the 2020 book, for example, that's largely underwater. I know there was an atomic detonation somewhere. I can't remember specifically. Maybe Chad could help me out with that. But yeah, JR has been like really diving into all the lore and everything like that. But it dawned on me when you guys were talking about that desert setting, I'm like, I think that's Santa Diego, Tijuana, because it is the most remote aspect of the game that I've seen. And the in-game book, like, it's right in the Bay Area, right where IGN is. So it goes as far east as Tahoe for the main area, as far north as like, I don't know, across the bridge from San Francisco, way up north. Yeah, I don't know where the real world thing, they call it the Ashmed Integrated Hub. And then Santa Diego is the farthest south. And with Los Angeles being mostly underwater, maybe you'll drive by that on your way to Night City if they've sort of scaled it down for the gameplay.
Well, this
What do you
looks
think,
like
Chad?
this looks like Joshua Tree right here. And if you're looking at this video of the car where it's at, based on the trees and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chad is like picking up on that too. 247 Gremlin
Yeah.
says it looks like Mojave Desert, Joshua Tree.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm also super into the idea because we've been running a lot of stories lately. You know, in the not too recent past, if you're going to make an open world game, you would always lead with that the world map is just physically larger than every one that's ever come before, sort of reaching its like pinnacle with GTA 5. But I'm interested in the idea that there are developers deciding that's not the main appeal. We don't have to do that. We've reached the point where the game world could be as huge as you want it to be. You can do Google Earth in VR and just fly around and around if you want. Let's focus and decide what we want to do. Because I, for one, it always strains my credulity when we have these massive world maps where their goal is to be, look how big it is. And you actually realize that even GTA 5, I lived in a lot of the neighborhoods that you saw, like the Santa Monica area I knew very well, to the point where in that world map, I could tell where they cut blocks out and which blocks were being seen together. So even like the biggest cities to ever exist are a tenth of the size of really how large that city actually is. I would love it if Night City was the whole world map, and you were like, that sounds dinky, but then you play it and you realize this is really the size of a city.
Well, that's
Like,
the
this really
promise.
feels
That's
as
the promise
big as
of
a
next gen technology, right? They're saying
Yeah.
we don't need to use smoke and mirrors to give the illusion of scale and the illusion of interactivity. We can actually provide it in real time. Like you see that door, you can open that door. You know, you can interact with these things. Like your AI pathing will respond to the things around you and the things that are happening around you. That makes it a lot more, I don't know, interesting to take place in a smaller confined space than a larger sprawling space where, you know, what incentive do you have to go out there at all except for to pass through?
I'm definitely more pro. If I had an option between having more stuff to do in a smaller area or just having further distances to travel with not a lot in between, I would definitely prefer the former.
Yeah. The Expender in chat asks, what if, depending on your background, you start off in a different part of the world map? For example, if you choose Street Kid, you start in the streets. With Nomad, you start in the desert. I love that idea, and it honestly wouldn't shock me given how much character customization they've like put forth in the marketing, and also how loyal they've been to the fact that this is a tabletop RPG, which frankly they didn't need to do. I was going to play it anyway. I like tabletop RPGs, but I don't need it to have been based on one. But they seem to care about that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. And then the other comment I wanted to shout out was Skinneopolis, who says, but can you customize the car's genitals?
That's a great question.
That deserves time, right?
It probably has truck nuts.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people latched on to that whole genital customization thing, but I was really heartened to see. Well, I mean, it's goofy, right? Obviously, that's why. But I was really heartened to see a lot of people were like, yeah, it's Cyberpunk. It's the future. You're basically a robot that can customize your entire body to be anything that you want. Like you have spider arms. So it doesn't really matter. And it does sort of fall into line with everything that we already know about the Cyberpunk 2020 world from like the game guide and all the stories that they've told about Cyberpunk 2020 to date. We don't know much about 2077 and the state of the world, or at least I don't off the top of my head. Chat might. But yeah, I mean, I don't care about it at all. How did you guys react to that news bit?
I'd like spider arms. That sounds rad.
There's the car in the desert there. It does look Mojave.
News or the car news? Yeah.
Both.
I thought it was. This is as ballsy as I'll be, pun not intended, on this show. It was interesting to me to see the Last of Us leaks engage so much hostility and then in quick successions, and I'm not going to reference spoilers, but in quick succession see this news not. And I think it speaks to CD Projekt Red just, I guess, having earned almost infinite goodwill. I'm surprised there weren't more trolls upset about, well, Naughty Dog also has lots of goodwill, but I don't know. Genital customization seems like something that would court the ire of a certain subset of gamers who I consider.
It's going to be as a length and girth slider, you know, or if it's really cool.
That's why they're okay with it. Yeah, that's why they're okay with it.
My take is the same as the one before, is that like other games have it too, so I don't really understand why it was such a big news story. Like Conan survival game also lets you, you know.
Mm-hmm. Oh right? Yeah, that was a news story. Boob size. Saints Row the Third did genital size customization. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, people want to know about Cyberpunk, and they're being very good about waiting a few days and then every few days going, here's something. I don't know. Here's something. And we're all like, yeah, give it to me. And I
want to, you know what I want to know? I want to know if the damn car can transform. Because if they have the technology to give you a flamethrower dick, I feel like they ought to be able to have the technology to have your car transform, right?
Were we told there would be flame-throwing genitals? Like, will they be involved in combat? I don't think that's confirmed.
It's just my own personal wish list, but you know, I think it's within the realm of possibility, right?
Oh. I would want detachable nunchuck.
Yeah. See, now you're thinking. Now you're thinking. But imagine if your car could split into a motorcycle like the Batmobile in The Dark Knight. You know what I mean?
Cool.
Or if it could just like take off and do some limited flight, or if it could turn into a dang robot like an actual transformer.
Yeah, for me, Witcher
Huh?
3 was all about, obviously, like it hit on lots of levels, but the depth and like actual substantive quality of the little stories. So as long as they're telling me little stories, I'll be super on board.
Little
Well, hold
stories
up.
about
Let's go back
transforming
to
cars.
hold up for just a second. I want to go back to genitals. Let's talk
Oh,
about.
Why?
Well, in the game, like lore already, there are two items that I was trying to find the name of them specifically. There's already like the Midnight Lady, where you can like this is in the old games that people play already, which enhances the female version of genitalia, and then there's Mr. Stud, which is a cyberware enhancement for the male version of this. It's the same thing, right? So this stuff was already in the game. And to answer your earlier question, Swaim, the reason why people didn't react as strongly, I think, is because they know that. And they know Michael Pondsmith is working directly with the developers. And they're like, yeah, I remember playing that game and I messed around with Mr. Stud and I messed around with Midnight Lady or whatever. It's not so strange because they've already established that sort of openness about things like that in their world.
That's true. And as a new property to most of the gaming audience versus a sequel, there's just not as much baggage as like, what are you going to do with these characters next? We're like, tell me a story. You know, we're just at the beginning of a journey. I think it's easier to slide things by. Okay. Well, was that enough Cyberpunk time? I think it is.
Can we talk more about
I'll try and
Mad
figure
Max
out a
Fury
way. Sorry, Matt.
Lead us back to genitals at some point if you could, Destin. And I can't.
I will.
Oh, great. But there was more news today, and some people like the more part of our news, games, and more. So next up on the docket is the Scarface reboot, which has just landed. Luca Guadagnino, I butchered that.
Nice.
But the guy who directed Call Me By Your Name, which was excellent, I did see and enjoy. Although not so much that I learned to pronounce his surname, and I apologize. But the guy who directed Call Me By Your Name, as well as the Suspiria remake, I didn't see that. I heard mixed
That was good.
things.
It was all right.
Good?
It was serviceable.
Okay.
It
Liked
just
it.
wasn't super necessary.
Yeah, I thought it was creepy, but like I don't know.
It was like a sophomore movie where he's like, I had a hit. Let me make whatever I want.
Yeah.
Pet project. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
if you watched one horror movie, I'd recommend Midsummer. But
there you go. This follows this project having many directors attached and later removed. Antoine Fuqua, who did Training Day at one point. David Ayer, of course, of Suicide Squad. David Yates of Harry Potter. I don't know which one. One of the Harry Potter.
Imagine the director of Suicide Squad getting Scarface. Jesus Christ.
Imagine the Suicide Squad treatment. Imagine if he just used the exact same tactics on a
Oh.
Scarface reboot. Oh my God. Yeah, but there's the question, of course, that always comes up with these. Scarface is huge. It's culturally important in film. Do we need another one, though? Is this a good idea or a bad idea? The other detail that I think will come up as cromulent is that the latest draft was written by Joel and Ethan Cohen.
yeah, that's honestly the most interesting part about the news. Is,
Yeah.
Yeah, to me too. Although, as someone pointed out on an earlier call at IGN today, the scripts they write don't always turn out as good as their own directorial track record. Like Suburbicon is not necessarily phenomenal. What else did they write? Only.
Let's talk about actors. Can we talk
Oh,
about who
okay.
we think should play the lead?
You can while I Google the Coen brothers.
All
Absolutely.
right, you do that.
They
Daniel
attached the lead.
Radcliffe. They said Harry Potter. I want to see
What?
Daniel Radcliffe take a shot at Tony Montana.
What are you talking about?
Look at him. Look at his Google profile picture. He's all like rugged. He's got that
He
beard
was-
going on. He's
was
old
in
now,
Exorcist.
man. He's
He
ready.
likes to do weird stuff now. He likes dark stuff now. It's true.
Never gonna happen. It's Pedro Pascal.
That's
Oh,
a
they
pretty
already
good one.
cast? They already
No,
cast
that's
him?
just who I think it should
Oh,
be.
yeah. Well, the hot rumor is that they got Michael B. Jordan for it.
Yeah.
Okay. I like
Yeah.
Michael Mando from Better Call Saul personally, I think.
Oh, he'd be great at it, actually.
Michael
If they
Mando.
change it and just like take a different take on it with like somebody like Michael B. Jordan, I could actually really get on board with a reboot. Like that modernizes it and takes a different
Yeah.
look at it. I would really like that a lot, actually. What do you guys think about that? Like, do you want that Tony Montana story again, or would you rather they just tell a new Scarface story, and I'd love to hear from Chad also.
I have mixed feelings about it, only because I think it's already kind of like a perfect movie, and I get that it's a remake, but the original movie is from like 1932, and you think about the difference in technology between then and when this movie was made, and then the 80s and now, it's not really that big. And I think if anything, like, performances have become worse, and like director auteurs have become fewer, at least in the mainstream, and we've really trended towards this like blockbuster style of filmmaking. And when we get a remake of like The Thing or RoboCop or something, it usually sucks because it's too like polished and obvious, and there's too much exposition, and it's like not really willing to take risks. And I just don't see what anybody could possibly have to add to Scarface, either from like a presentation or a performance perspective, that would be like worth going to see again, rather than just like watching the original once more.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, do you ever go ahead?
I'm with Jeremy. I absolutely do not want a remake. Do not do a remake. Is that what you're saying, Jeremy?
Yeah, but I also like, I don't know. I think there is like there's a lot of like cultural significance to that story for a lot of people too, where just throwing that away and like starting it over is a whole different thing. I'm not really excited about either. I don't think that's a good idea either.
Do you ever buy the argument that
disrespectful?
Is there such a thing as enough time passing? I mean, we're seeing this with remasters in video games so much right now, and I think the argument holds water. There's people alive who haven't seen Scarface ever, and the movie's now too dated for them to want to watch it, and this movie could have the same impact on them that watching Scarface had on us. No?
I have a hard time thinking of that movie as dated. I don't know, and that just might be like my age and experience and everything, but I don't know.
I would be no if it was a remake. I don't want them to remake Raging Bull. I don't want them to remake Taxi Driver. I don't want them to remake like my favorite old films that just you should leave alone. Mm-hmm. Scarface is one of those films. They just really nailed that story about Tony Montana. Now, would I be interested in hearing another story like that though, about somebody deciding to take that path in life and their ultimate personal destruction? Absolutely, I would love to hear another story like that. So I wonder if they're attaching the Scarface name to a different type of film.
Just around that theme, which is a universal theme. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I mean, they're getting really creative with these sort of, and there's two things. They get really like casual with how they throw around words like reboot and remake. Like there was Creed, which was a sequel, but they never really called it a sequel to the Rocky movie.
It was billed as a reboot, even though it was just a sequel.
An actual sequel, right? And then there's like Blade Runner 2049, which was also a sequel, which had, they were weird about what to call it exactly. I would be interested in a Scarface reinterpretation of like similar themes and maybe like callbacks to the original movie, but like a pseudo sequel in that vein.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Taxi Driver, Destin, and I feel like, I hope this doesn't cause too much controversy. I think in some ways, Joker is a remake of Taxi Driver that did what you said. It's not really a remake at all. It's just... Well,
they didn't call it Taxi Driver 2. They didn't call it Taxi Driver
It's a film
reboot.
with a similar... Right, but it couldn't exist without Taxi Driver. It was a new artist many years later saying, I have a riff on that theme as well. And I think that's the way that this could get me. Yeah.
Don't call it Scarface then.
But the fact that they're marketing as it's Scarface, it means it has to be a lot closer than Joker is to Taxi Driver, obviously.
Are they marketing it that way? Or is this just like a story where it landed on a director?
That's true. I guess I would imagine if a director's signing onto a project, the working title of which is Scarface, I'd be surprised if at the end of the process the movie is not called Scarface.
If this was some hack project that like, an unknown writer was doing, sure, but this is the Coen brothers writing it, so I don't think so. Like, this isn't like Total Recall where they made a completely different movie and then couldn't sell it, and so they just pretended it was Total Recall.
Right.
Well, man, they did that with another one recently. I can't remember what it was. This happens a lot. I think it was Point Break. They made a movie that was not Point Break, and they were like, okay, it's
Oh,
a
that
it's a
movie
remake of
sucked.
Point Break. So a bunch of people went to saw it, and they're like, I don't understand how this is like Point Break at all. Like, in no way is this like that.
Point Break was bad. The RoboCop reboot was bad,
Very
and
bad,
like
yeah.
I had hope for the RoboCop, you know, retelling or whatever, and no, it just didn't land the same. You go watch that old movie, and man, when they blow his hand off and then like he gets remade, the sound design is so good, and it's just
And it's red from
I
that
don't know.
70s.
Yeah, I don't know how the hell that movie just managed to get away with what they did at the time. It was so gory. They really, really went all in on the gore. And yeah, I just like it. I don't know. Now I want to watch RoboCop. And he's in Mortal Kombat now, too. So
Yeah. All right.
Well, that's
idea.
Verhoeven,
Scarface.
right? Yeah, Verhoeven. He also did Starship Troopers with all the
Fantastic
people
movie.
just buck naked in the shower scene.
Yeah.
That guy pushes envelopes. That's what he does.
he's in the
He gets
Netflix
results though.
show.
His movies are all great.
Yeah, I like Verhoeven a lot. Yeah. Speaking of which, I love the
Verhoeven
Coen brothers.
He did make Showgirls, so he's made a
That's
couple
true.
stinkers, but even his stinkers are classics.
His stinkers are engaging and entertaining. That's more than a lot of stuff. To like provide conclusion, I wanted to mention the other movies that the Coen brothers wrote that I was thinking of were Crime Wave and Bridge of Spies. So yeah, they're boring as hell when they're not directing their own script for some reason. So I don't have high hopes for Scarface in the end, I would say.
Yeah,
let's talk-
I wish them well, but there's just no point. Like,
I wish
come
them
up
well.
with a new idea for Christ's sake.
Right,
My
yeah.
God.
Okay, so
You know who
speaking
came
of
up with the Sorry.
Oh, no, I got a good one. Let me take it, dude.
All right.
Speaking of what we've just heaped upon a potential Scarface reboot, let's talk about Scorn. Scorn, from our metric standpoint, was sort of a surprise. Thank you. Thank you. Or screw me, whichever you prefer. Surprise hit of the first of what will be monthly sort of Xbox, what are they called? Directs? Lives? Showcases? Help me out, Matt.
Well, this one was
Xbox
big.
2020.
Xbox 2020. All right.
Yeah.
Scorn's been out for a while. Yeah, you were gonna say, Destin? Please context us.
Just very excited about Scorn, so I'm keep interrupting, and I feel bad, but very, very stoked about Scorn. I'm excited for when it comes out, and yeah, they talked about it a lot more and why it's going to be on the Xbox Series X, and I love Xbox Series X stories. Do you mind if I tell them the news part?
Suspense.
Yeah, so they're talking about sort of bringing it in line with the PC version and how the Xbox Series X specifically, their most important note was the elimination of CPU bottleneck that exists in the current gen consoles and much faster loading of assets thanks to the SSD. It's all about responsiveness and not having to wait on things. So yeah, man. And that game I love games that try something new and weird, and Scorn just hits a lot of those tones for me. It's creepy as hell, a little bit gross, and I just want to explore that world and see what the hell's going on. What was your reaction to it, Swaim?
I immediately fell in love with it. I love stuff like that. Probably my favorite fine artist of all time. Every time I say his name to try and promote him out of love, some Polish person tells me how badly I butchered it, but is a surrealist named Zdzisław Beksinski, who the Doom Eternal team also cited as a reference for their concept art. And I know everyone's mind immediately goes to H.R. Giger when they see this stuff, but I actually think the Scorn stuff looks more like Beksinski's stuff, to the point where I feel like we're getting something I never thought we would get, which is a Zdzisław Beksinski game, and it looks incredible to me. I also love super weird, creepy, old games that make you feel weird. Like going back in my history, I don't know if you played any of these, but Dark Seed was very big for me. Bad Mojo, where you get turned into a full motion video cockroach. Anything weird and grimy, I'm super in.
I think people get Geiger just because it has a little bit of an alien aesthetic, and that's how most people know him from. But anybody who's really familiar with the artist knows that he is deeply fixated on biomechanical humans and a weird deep-seated psychosexual body horror thing, which really comes through in this. And I gotta tell you, I'm picking up what they're putting down with this one. I will be playing Scorn for sure. It's so creepy and so great. Love the aesthetic of it.
Yeah, you knew they weren't pulling punches as soon as the trailer featured that thing that's clearly an alien penis, because that's what H.R. Giger loved, and that's what Alien stripped out, because they're like, we get it, you're weird, but enough with the penises. But
Swain,
they're like,
we
no,
say
the
genitalia at IGN. Come on.
sorry, no. The question is, will Scorn
technically
alien
called a
genitals be customizable?
Yeah, well, if you have Unreal Engine 4, the squirt is in your hands.
Matt, you
yeah,
gonna be playing?
Go, yeah, Matt, please.
What?
You gonna
What's
play
your
Scorn?
take on Scorn generally?
You like
Is
it?
your type of game?
I'll play it. I'm reserving opinion until I see gameplay, which I realized was a big controversial thing from the Xbox 2020 thing. But yeah, no, I've been hurt before by falling in love with a cool alien aesthetic, Prometheus, to name one. You know, so while I'm very into it aesthetically because I'm a huge fan of the Alien movies, I can't just immediately get hyped for something that reminds me of Alien because
Well, tech-wise, they did talk about it a little bit more. We saw this game actually in 2017. We saw gameplay of it. And apparently they say that pre-alpha level we showed is about 80% different right now. The demo was created to show backers we can develop a proper game and an overall potential of what the game could be. It wasn't supposed to be a final representation of the game. So the new footage that we've been getting of Scorn is really, really exciting. And Matt, can you tell us a little bit more about how they landed on X versus PS5 and the architecture stuff there?
In what regards?
Well, I was just trying to set you up for the next bullet point.
Oh well, okay, you're gonna have to take it over. You're clearly into the story more than I am, actually.
The mask is falling away.
Oh no, it's all falling apart.
Just cut to sausages being made, scrolling by.
We don't know if it's going to come to Steam or Windows Store simultaneously, and they're not really commenting on. They said they actually won't discuss that information right now. So, yeah, it's a Series X launch.
That's the one thing that makes me a little hesitant. Is personally, I'm not a big Abrams guy. I don't like the idea of a mystery box that you never find out what it is, and that's what's so great about it. So the specific quote from our piece, you can, of course, read the whole piece at IGN.com, where he says, the initial pitch hasn't changed that much, but we will never disclose it. I'm like, all right, calm down, dude. It's like wandering up on a kid at recess and they're drawing something really creepy and you're like, that looks dark. What's that about? And they're like, you're not allowed to know. I'm like, all right, it wasn't that big of a deal.
They're just like covering up their drawing. Like, don't look at it.
Yeah.
That's for me.
Well, they probably, I think they don't want to reveal it because they want to see the natural reaction to what they have planned for us.
I agree, but I'll say sometimes when you focus on something too much, listen, I'm super excited about this game. I'm just saying the only way I could see it shake out not great for me is sometimes when you're that focused on tone, it has happened before where the game feels more like an art piece than like a solid game in its mechanics. And his quote about like, it's pretty much 50-50 when it comes to gameplay and puzzles, all wrapped up in an atmosphere that will elevate it much further than the sum of its parts. I love
gunplay. Yeah.
And I do agree that atmosphere can elevate things, but if you're playing something for 25 hours, the game also has to be good. Look at Doom 3. The atmosphere alone will not carry the whole experience. So I'm just waiting to see like what the loop is, the actual gameplay loop.
I would say that Death Stranding was very divisive when it came out, but for the people that like Death Stranding, and it was about 50-50, I'd say, down the board, there was a lot of atmosphere building in that game. Gameplay wise was probably the biggest criticism that game received, because we only like Call of Duty in America, right? Kojima, just kidding.
I love the gameplay in Death Stranding, and the current realities of life has made me only love that game even more.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, I think you might be pleasantly surprised, Swain, is the point I'm trying to make.
Oh yeah,
we don't know.
I am going to light up the comments and then move on and never mention this again. But I'm just playing through Death Stranding because of quarantine time. And I started at IGN 8 months ago now. When you started IGN, they ask you, what's your favorite video game? I said Psychonauts at the time. If you asked me today, I would say Death Stranding.
Really?
You're kidding me. For real?
That answer hasn't changed since Psychonauts came out.
Dang.
Wow.
So I'm like having a serious thing with Death Stranding.
Have you
But
played
that's-
Mass Effect? Have you played Super Mario RPG?
Have you played Witcher
played
3?
Tetris?
Witcher? Yeah.
Yes. I said I was going to gloss over it and move on. Although I did want to shout out commenter Sweet Life to Live, who says, hopefully someone can mod Scorn to VR when it shows up on Steam. And I agree. That's
Yeah, you
awesome.
really okay.
That sounds mad creepy.
Yeah, I like Mad Creepy. Okay. Feel free to push back if this is like too dry of a story, because I threw these two stories together. Well, I think it's a big deal. But basically, we ran a story saying video game spending for the first quarter of 2020 was the highest in U.S. history. Cha-ching. And then I see connections there that I have just foisted onto the show between a story that Video Games 24/7 ran today saying, basically quoting from an earnings call saying that Nintendo expects, quote, large impact on game development due to coronavirus. So I just see them as sort of like, it's a very unstable, chaotic time to be a fan of games or in the business of gaming, where there's things that are happening that are really, I don't even want to say good because we're in the midst of a global pandemic crisis. But I mean, there are things that are happening, like we're all home playing games. On the other hand, we're worried about where our next movies and games are going to come from, when life will get back to normal, which of course affects every aspect of life, but pop culture as well. And that's what we talk about here. So, yeah, did you guys have thoughts or dig into this, or is this like a business story that I shouldn't have brought up?
I mean, I
Of
can
course
see why
sales are
spending
up.
is so high. Yeah, like what the hell else are you gonna do? You're home all the time. Like,
Yeah, but at the
all
same
of us are playing
time,
games.
Nintendo saying some of our delivery timelines
Mhm.
maybe will be impacted when, I don't know, from what I've just been reading in the IGN sphere, most developers have been saying, no, we transitioned really well to home. I mean, in the case of Last of Us, they were like
Right,
delayed
no.
forever. And then they're like, no, it's good. We got it. So it's sort of troubling for me to hear Nintendo say, quote, a Nintendo president, Shintaro Furukawa, say, quote, that there could be like significant delays. What was the one that really bugged me? Significant delays on first party titles specifically that will, quote, make it difficult to release titles as currently planned. And I know I'm being greedy. I'm just
Here's
sad.
me making up for the little faux pas on Scorn a little earlier, right?
Okay.
And it's like, and I think the news cycle has been too short term on the impact of COVID on the games industry since the pandemic started, or since the pandemic hit North America. I think a lot of people have been talking about this crisis in months rather than years, right? And we've seen from developers like EA who say that there's still going to be a FIFA game this winter. That development for short-term games like Last of Us 2 is still coming out, Cyberpunk is still coming out. These games have not been impacted by COVID, and that's been proven by the fact that their release dates have not changed, right? Because these are all short-term games. The long term of it changes, right? If you're in a game that's maybe in 30% development or 40% development, stuff like voice acting, motion capture, those stuff have not been developed yet, right? They're still in gameplay testing, like planning, story writing. And that's when I think we're going to start seeing more impacts. Once they start having to hire actors to do voice acting recording, hire actors to do motion capture, that stuff is going to get bottlenecked a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years down the line. And that's when we're going to start seeing delays.
Well, as
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
Phil Spencer has alluded to delays for the same reasons that Matt just outlined. So we know that's going to be a problem. And the PlayStation 5 has been very upfront that they're going to have limited consoles available, and this is going to impact them. So I don't think Nintendo is surprising anybody, because we've been hearing this. Now we have heard that the Xbox Series X will not be impacted production wise, so they must have just been ahead of it and ready to go. But software wise, everybody's saying, hey, things are going to be impacted, period.
Right, but just
I do
not this
think,
year.
yeah, you make a really, really good point about the short term versus the long term. I personally still feel a little bit optimistic. A lot of companies are saying that they're actually not seeing a drop in productivity with a work from home environment, and this is more like in the larger space, like companies like Twitter and Facebook are like, we may never go back to working in the office. It actually might not actually be necessary, right? And I can tell you from, like, I've done a lot of work in animation, and the times that I have directed a voice actor remotely versus in person is like 8-2. Yeah, a lot of voice acting can be managed remotely very, very well. Motion capture, we're looking at all this technology where the guys at Sony and the guys at Xbox and the guys at Unreal just keep saying, like, this code writes itself, like it fills in the gaps on behaviors and movements and all these things. Like, maybe the way that games were made before might not be the same, but the technology might be rising to meet the occasion. And I think it's not a question at all, and it's something we've talked about on the show many times, that like physical production is going to be problematic. There just might not be enough people or parts or ability to even ship things overseas and all this stuff. But we are in an increasingly more digital medium, and I think that we'll probably see a gap where maybe things take a little dip, but I think this industry in particular is extremely well suited to adapt to any situation, more so than film and television and manufacturing and a lot of other industries are.
Yeah, actually, off the top of my head, I could even name 2 games that did like advanced motion capture from enclosed, like, their offices, not like a professional studio. Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, and Observation. They both did like most of their motion capture stuff from spare rooms around their office space.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be done.
Yeah, I also want to throw out an interesting sort of like back and forth I saw in the comments on the piece. Dysphoric says, unfortunate circumstances, of course, but I hope a plus side is the profit from this period will go towards publishers taking a chance on greenlighting more projects they might not have otherwise. To which Professor of Gaming replied, it may have the opposite effect, unfortunately. A lot of the growth is focused behind the big money makers like sports, Call of Duty, WoW, etc. And I especially wanted to pick Jeremy's brain because, I mean, for my money, Jeremy always has super good takes on the business of gaming. Who's right in that? Who's right in that argument?
Man, I don't know. That is a really hard one to call because, well, look at it like this. Like, we're currently living in sort of like a cultural renaissance for independent game development. And like I said before, the tools are only becoming more and more available. Unreal had said, and I don't know if you covered this on the show yesterday, but they had said that they're making their tools for free for developers until their game generates like $1 million in profit, which means a lot of small studios are going to have access to extremely advanced tools that they didn't have access to before. And this is becoming increasingly more commonplace. Like, I go on Steam every day and look at the games on there, and a lot of those games are never going to be on consoles and they're never going to be mainstream. But in between the big AAA games, I play a lot of those games, and some of my most enjoyable experiences are playing those games. So I don't think that this is going to have as much impact on those independent developers as it is on the big AAAs. I think if anything, AAAs are going to have a little bit more trouble, especially ones that are located in Japan, like Nintendo, that have like very, very, very tightly controlled systems in place for like quality control and development and communication and everything. Like, Nintendo already had like long development times and like very how many Nintendo Switch games do you see coming out even before this happened?
Right.
How many ports do you see hitting Nintendo? Of course, the guys at Nintendo are going to say things are slowing down. They've been slowing down. They slowed down months or maybe even years ago for them, right? So how it affects independent game developers, like I guess I'm kind of leaning more towards positively.
I think we're also maybe being a little too broad in terms of this topic. actually spoke with developers in Japan, and a lot of them told me that like Japanese work culture is not very conducive to work from home, which is why they're struggling more than
Yeah,
North
I believe
American
that.
or European game studios. A lot of their work really does depend on going to an office every day, and they're very and like upper management is very suspicious of letting them take home these kind of equipment that that North American game studios might be more liberal on like handing out.
Well, in their defense, we have a lot more leaks and
Yeah.
bundles than they do for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I spoke with a couple developer friends of mine, and that's one thing that they've all told me is that in Japan they're having a harder time working from home than say we are, or like EA or Capcom's Japanese. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I took this job in large part because I used to work from home, and I moved my whole life to the Bay Area for the promise of being forced to go into a building every day and interact with people.
How's that working out for you?
So thanks for that. This show, I'm having so much fun. This is like a party for me now. That's how far my bar has lowered.
Wow, thanks.
Well, I just want to say I never got to really say my piece on the professor of
go
gaming
ahead.
quote, but anything that's going to allow smaller people to innovate and present new ideas that challenge us, perspective wise, I'm all for. I want to try out Scorn. I want to try out Bright Memory. Those are new IPs I hadn't known about until I saw them during the Xbox conference, and that has me more excited than ever. And it might be more difficult for the Call of Duties and everything, but even they've largely adapted. So I'm not so worried about the billion-dollar people, but I am really excited about the small indie studios that are trying something new and exciting for the first time. And overall, I think it's a positive.
Yeah, well said. All right, I'm actually, hear me, TD John Borba, our god of all things transitional. I'm going to go ahead and skip to our bottom story because we're a little short on time, and I misordered these. It's clearly the most important story. Control's next expansion will help explain what happened in Alan Wake. Now, we named Control Game of the Year not too long ago. I am a huge Control fan. I got it on Xbox, so I'm still waiting for that first DLC to hit Xbox, which is later in June. But I will admit, I didn't Alan Wake. So what's the deal with Alan Wake? Was the ending really that? Okay, you said it's so good, Matt. At the point of the ending, did you need more explained? Do you feel there was left unexplained? Okay.
It left on a cliffhanger for sure. Both the expansions and even the American Nightmare expansion, which was more of like an arcade bonus game, but with a little story fed in. But yeah, the ultimate fate of Alan Wake is unknown, and the coolest part about Control was how it specifically mentions Alan Wake. Like it brings the Alan Wake game into Control's universe. So did you see the little promotional image that they provided for the next Control expansion?
I don't think I did.
No.
Okay, so it's called AWE, which in Control is Alter World Event, but it has a picture of Alan Wake's box art on top and Control's box art on the bottom. And my theory is AWE can also stand for the Alan Wake expansion. So it's a little.
Oh, interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, and like there's a bunch of mentions of Alan Wake in like in-game material, reading material in Control, and it explains that all of the events that happen in Alan Wake are actually altered world events, which is a term that was introduced in Control.
And so that's it. They specifically call it what the Bright Falls event, right? So when they mention that in Control, they're referring to the events of Alan Wake.
Yep.
That's like the case file for that.
Yep.
So does that imply? I mean, I guess it does. Some kind of like Remedy-verse. I guess all these things are going to be interconnected. I wonder if
we already know that they're connected. They reference Alan
Yeah.
Wake several times within the main story of Control and some of the side quests and sort of things that you discover, which is really cool.
Yeah. I guess what I'm getting at is what the Wise Wolf asks. I never played Alan Wake. Does that mean I won't understand the game because I really like Control and I want to keep going?
No, yeah.
I don't think so.
Control is its own thing. All the Alan Wake stuff in Control is just small Easter eggs. But what it does sound like is that the next story expansion for Control might be like a sort of Avengers event for Remedy, where they bring in their two big properties together into a shared story.
I don't know, Swaim. I hear you like Death Stranding. Maybe you should just stick to that game. Alan Wake might be a different type of game.
Yeah.
Just teasing. Just teasing.
I didn't mind how sort of purposefully vague Alan Wake was. Like I like that in that sort of storytelling where, you know, the supernatural is not really meant to be understood always. I don't like I like stories that position themselves in such a way where they're like, you're not meant to really understand the supernatural. You're just meant to like experience it. And, you know, Control does a really good job of riding the line between like over and under explaining. And I think the developers have just really always wanted to go back to Alan Wake, but haven't had like a sort of financial reason to do it. And now they have sort of a creative reason to do it, which, you know, has got to be a lot of fun for them. And those developers are so nice and like so cool. Like, I'm just really happy to see them like be able to do this and to be able to
the video they sent us reacting
sent me
to us
this mug,
saying
actually.
Control was the game of the year was like heartwarming in the extreme. Yeah, we love each other.
I love hanging out with
our
those guys.
credibility is compromised.
It's just they're some of the most like positive people, and I think that they've always wanted to do this. And you know, I'm really excited for this DLC because you know, the promise of them being able to fulfill that wish, I think, is going to drive them to do some of their best work. And Control was already a phenomenal game.
Yeah,
and I played the living hell out of that one. Like, just did all of the side quests and everything. And
have you done the DLC already, Jeremy?
I haven't yet because I'm like I'm like playing like 5 different games at the same time right now.
Right. That one's called The Foundation. Already available. After these, Remedy is embarking on 2 more next-gen games set in the same franchise. So yeah, they're building out a universe that's going to already have quite a few installments in it. Pretty
I saw
cool.
someone in the comments mention Quantum Break. That there was also Quantum Break Easter eggs in Control, but I think the focus of the next expansion will be Alan Wake.
Were the Quantum Break Easter eggs such that you could
similar to the Alan Wake stuff? These are all Control is very much its own thing, and you can play it and not have played the previous games and enjoy it to its full extent. But if you're a big fan of Remedy games,
yeah, it's that Pixar maneuver where they make 8 great movies that stand on their own as great movies, and then they're like, by the way, they're all connected.
You know,
it
right?
doesn't matter, but it's cool.
Yeah.
All right, we got time for one more story before we sign off. Incidentally, is there an Up at Noon to promote right now?
There is.
No one reached out. The other 2 stories were Matrix Forecast List, which there was no news on. You can find the list at IGN.com. And the fact that James Cameron's guilty pleasure movie is Resident Evil, which he calls quite beautifully made. So I think we should...
What?
All right. I guess we can't gloss over. James Cameron says his guilty pleasure movie is Resident Evil, which he considers quite beautifully made. He also said, quote, watching Michelle Rodriguez in that film moving like a feral creature is a joy.
What?
What are you talking about?
I don't know. That's what he said.
I mean,
well,
oh man,
I mean,
the movie's not the worst video game movie, but it's not like good.
It's
Jeremy,
not good.
how many Academy Awards do you have? Well, James Cameron has, I don't know, 5 or something. So
how many does Paul W.S. Anderson have?
he deserves he deserves more.
How deeply in the ocean have you driven under your power in the submarine you designed?
Not that far. It's true.
I wish he had said his guilty pleasure movie is the quite beautifully made Sonic the Hedgehog. I wish that had been the movie.
But the one with the customizable genitals.
Yeah. Bringing it back.
Circle. Yeah. All right. So that means it's time to get out of here.
You can do that in Cyberpunk, actually.
I did want to, Jeremy, you have the words on the tip of your tongue. Promote our pals because they're up next.
Coming up next are our friends Max and Brian with Up at Noon. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but they're on every single Friday at 5 p.m. after our show, which is actually noon in Fiji. So that's pretty cool. Also, we should thank our sponsor for this week, PUBG Mobile. This is a new show for us. PUBG Mobile has come in and helped us make this show happen, and we're really super thankful to them. Please go download the game. Please check out their channel. Check it out. They're doing some really cool new stuff. But thank you so much to PUBG Mobile for making this happen for us here on NG Plus.
Yep, just premiered season 13 this week. So you'll want to get trained up and ready to brawl with these brand new additions. Thank you to Destin, Matt, Jeremy. I'm Michael. Should we share our Twitter handles? We usually do. I'm
Sure,
at
go for it.
Swaincar. What?
Great.